It was supposed to be a simple camping trip. Just four friends, a fire, and the cool night air. We arrived at the forest late in the afternoon. The sun was beginning to dip behind the trees, painting the sky orange and red. The air smelled like pine and damp earth. It was the kind of smell that usually made me feel calm, but that day, it carried something else with it. Something heavy. We laughed and joked while setting up the tents. Liam and Sarah worked on gathering firewood, while Jessica and I unpacked the sleeping bags. Everything felt normal, almost too normal. By nightfall, the fire was blazing, crackling brightly, sending sparks up into the night. The forest around us was silent except for the usual noises. An owl here, a cricket there, the kind of silence you expect when you're far from the city. We roasted marshmallows, told old ghost stories, and teased each other about being afraid of the dark. It felt like any other camping night, until the clock struck midnight. That's when we heard it. At first it was faint, like a giggle carried by the wind. I froze. Liam stopped mid-sentence, and Jessica's face paled. Sarah tilted her head, listening. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. The sound came again, clearer this time. Laughter. Not the kind of laughter you share with friends. It was sharp, echoing, unnatural. The kind of laugh that makes your skin crawl. But when we shined our flashlights toward the trees, there was nothing, just branches swaying in the wind. We tried to shake it off, saying it was probably another group camping nearby. Maybe kids pulling a prank. That explanation helped us breathe easier, for a while. But then, the laughter grew louder and closer. It came from the left, then the right, then behind us, as if the forest itself was laughing. And the worst part, it wasn't just one laugh anymore. It was many. Men, women, even children. All of them laughing together, surrounding us. Sarah grabbed my arm. "There's no one out there," she whispered, her voice trembling. "There can't be." Liam, trying to stay brave, shouted into the darkness. "Who's there? Show yourself!" The laughter stopped instantly. The silence that followed was worse. Our fire popped loudly, and the woods seemed to lean in closer. We sat frozen, eyes darting into the dark. Minutes passed. Nothing. Slowly we relaxed, thinking maybe it had been the wind after all. But just as we started to calm down, the laughter exploded again. This time, right behind our tents. I spun around, shining my light. But the beam landed on nothing but trees and shadows. No footprints, no movement. Just the endless black of the forest. Jessica began to cry quietly, burying her face in her hands. Sarah clutched her flashlight like a weapon. Liam tried to keep the fire strong, throwing more wood into it, as if the flames could protect us. Then we noticed something. The laughter wasn't just echoing randomly anymore. It was forming a rhythm, a pattern, almost like it was circling us, faster and faster. The voices cackled, giggled, whispered, howled, all blending together in a horrible, inhuman chorus. We didn't sleep that night. We sat huddled together by the fire, wide-eyed, waiting for morning. But morning didn't bring peace. When the sun finally rose, we found something in the dirt near our camp. Dozens of footprints, bare feet, some small like children's, others large, misshapen. They led out into the woods and vanished. We wanted to leave, but Liam convinced us to stay one more night. He thought maybe it was locals trying to scare us, or our imaginations running wild. That night the laughter returned, louder, bolder. At one point, it sounded as though dozens of people were right outside the circle of firelight, laughing so hard it turned into screams. And then, the voices began calling our names. Sarah, Jessica, Liam, and then softly, right behind me, Daniel. I felt breath on my neck. I spun, but no one was there. We ran. We didn't care about the tents, the gear, or the fire. We sprinted through the forest, tripping on roots, branches tearing at our clothes. The laughter followed us, chasing us, until we reached the road. When we finally stumbled into the car and sped away, the sound faded behind us. But here's the thing. Even now, weeks later, when I'm trying to fall asleep, sometimes I hear it again. That same sharp, unnatural laugh, right outside my window. And I can't help but wonder, if we hadn't run, if we had stayed one more night, would we have become part of the laughter in the woods? The forest at night is never truly silent. There are whispers of wind, the far-off calls of owls, the creak of trees swaying as though groaning from some invisible weight. But on that camping trip, the silence was not natural. It was the kind that waits, the kind that listens. We were 3 friends, Daniel, Mark, and myself. We'd gone camping in the national forest to escape the noise of the city, to spend a long weekend by the fire with nothing but stars above us. The first day had been perfect. Bright skies, warm air, and the smell of pine thick around us. But as evening fell, a strange heaviness settled in the air. By the time the fire was crackling and we were passing around a flask, the night seemed darker than it should have been. The trees stood like a wall of black shapes, blocking the moonlight. And then it came. A howl. Not a wolf's howl, not quite. It was stretched too long, too broken, too deliberate. It rose from deep in the woods, carrying through the still air until every hair on my arm stood on end. We laughed it off at first. Mark called it a coyote. Daniel said it might be the wind. But then the sound came again. This time clearer, sharper, and unmistakably shaped into a word. My name. Chris. The syllables stretched on the night air, twisting into something like a howl. Something not human, but close enough to chill the blood. I froze, the flask slipping from my fingers into the dirt. Daniel's eyes widened. Mark forced a laugh, but it sounded strained. "You guys heard that, right?" I whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. "Yeah, I heard it." None of us spoke after that. We simply sat around the fire, each pretending not to notice how our hands trembled. Finally, Mark shook his head and muttered, "Someone's messing with us. Gotta be." But who could be out here? We had hiked nearly an hour from the trailhead, pitched our tent far from where anyone else would camp. There were no other cars in the parking lot when we arrived. We tried to brush it off, tried to sleep, but in the dead of night, as the fire sank into embers, the howl came again. This time it carried Daniel's name. Daniel. His eyes shot open, wide and gleaming in the firelight. He whispered my name like he wanted reassurance that I was real, that I was still there beside him. I was, but I had no reassurance to give. We barely slept. Every snap of a twig outside, every whisper of leaves made us jolt awake. By dawn, none of us felt rested. We were pale, quiet, and unwilling to discuss the night before. The second day passed in uneasy silence. We hiked further into the woods, pretending everything was normal. Pretending the trees weren't too still, the air too heavy, the silence too absolute. That evening, the howling returned. Louder, closer. This time it didn't bother stretching into the wind. It was a voice now, broken, warping, but unmistakable. It called Mark. Mark, He leapt to his feet, flashlight in hand, and shined it into the woods. The beam lit nothing but endless trees. "Show yourself," he shouted, his voice cracking. "This isn't funny." But the voice only laughed. A sound like wet air pushed through torn lungs. It carried and twisted through the trees, bouncing from every direction until we couldn't tell where it had come from. We sat close to the fire, too afraid to sleep, too afraid to move. That night was worse. The voice didn't stop at our names. It began whispering sentences, warped but understandable. "You can't leave. You are mine. I'm hungry." It circled our camp, sometimes far away, sometimes so close we swore it was right behind us. Once, I swear I saw movement. A pale figure darting between trees, thin and long-limbed. My stomach turned to ice. At dawn, we packed our gear in silence. We didn't need to discuss it. We had to leave, but the woods didn't want us to. As we hiked back, every step felt heavier. The forest seemed to stretch endlessly. Hours passed, but we didn't reach the trailhead. At some point, Daniel stopped suddenly, pointing at the dirt path. There were footprints, ours and another set, larger pair. They followed us perfectly. Every step we took, there they were, matching. By late afternoon, the voice returned. It wasn't waiting for night anymore. It echoed across the forest, closer than ever. "Chris." Daniel grabbed my arm. "It's right there," he whispered, "behind us." I didn't look. I couldn't. If I looked, I knew I'd see something I wasn't meant to see. We ran. The forest blurred around us, trees twisting and closing in. Mark stumbled, fell, but we dragged him to his feet. The voice followed us, laughing, calling, howling, always with our names. At last, just before nightfall, we reached the trailhead. Our car was waiting, just as we'd left it. We piled in, slammed the doors, and sped off without a word. But here's the thing. As the headlights lit the dirt road ahead, I caught sight of the rearview mirror. Something stood at the tree line. Tall, thin, watching. Its mouth was open wide in an endless howl. And though we drove for hours, the sound never left us. Even now, years later, when the wind rises at night and the trees creak outside my window, I sometimes hear it again. It still knows my name. It started with a simple camping trip. 2 nights. Just me, my brother Ethan, and our friend Carla. We chose a forest near an old hiking trail, far enough from town that no cars, houses, or people would interrupt us. The woods were quiet, untouched, and perfect for a weekend of peace. Or at least, that's what we thought. The first night was ordinary. We set up camp, cooked dinner over the fire, and laughed about how none of us really knew how to camp properly. The air was cool, the crickets chirped, and the night sky was clear. But then, just after midnight, Ethan pointed into the trees. "Do you guys see that?" At first, I thought it was just the glow of fireflies, but no. It was brighter. A pale orange light, glowing faintly through the trees. Carla squinted. "Looks like a lantern." We stared at it. The light didn't move. It just hung there, suspended in the dark, too high to be someone's flashlight, too still to be a firefly. We argued quietly about whether to check it out, but eventually decided to leave it alone. Maybe it was another camper. Maybe just someone hanging lanterns for decoration. The next morning, the light was gone. We almost forgot about it until the second night. Around the same time, the light appeared again. Only this time, there were 2, hanging deeper in the woods, glowing faintly, as if waiting for us to notice. Carla frowned. "That's weird. There's no trail over there." Ethan wanted to check it out, but something in my gut told me to stay away. The lights felt wrong. They weren't flickering like normal lanterns. They glowed steady, almost unnaturally so. We went to bed uneasy that night, but sleep didn't last. At around 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of rustling outside the tent. I held my breath, listening. When I peeked out, my blood went cold. The lanterns had moved. Now, there were 3 of them, hanging just beyond our campsite, glowing silently among the trees. And underneath the closest one, something was moving. A shadow, a figure. It stood completely still, as if watching our tents. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and when I looked again, the figure was gone, but the lanterns remained. The next morning, we found footprints near the fire pit, bare feet. Ethan tried to laugh it off, saying it was just locals playing tricks, but I could see the fear in his eyes. Carla didn't say a word. She just stared at the trees, pale and quiet. That evening, we made a decision: pack up and leave after one last meal. But as the sun went down, the woods grew unnaturally quiet. No wind, no birds, no insects, just silence. And then, the lights returned. Not 1, not 3, dozens. Lanterns hung from the branches in every direction, glowing faintly like stars that had fallen from the sky. They surrounded our campsite completely, forming a perfect circle of light. Carla whispered, "They weren't there before. They just appeared." I could barely breathe. The glow was soft, almost beautiful, but there was nothing natural about it. Then we saw them. Figures, dozens of them, standing beneath the lanterns, tall, thin. Shapes motionless, their faces hidden in shadow. Ethan shouted, "Who are you? What do you want?" The figures didn't move. The lanterns swayed gently, as if stirred by an invisible hand. And then, one by one, the lights began to drift closer, not swinging like lanterns on a rope. Floating, Carla screamed. We grabbed what we could and ran, crashing through the trees, leaving our tents and gear behind. The lanterns followed, slowly, silently, always just far enough that we couldn't see who or what held them. But as we stumbled onto the dirt road leading out of the forest, the lights stopped, just like that. They hovered at the edge of the trees, watching. We didn't look back again. When we returned with the rangers the next day, our campsite was gone. No tents, no bags, no fire pit, nothing. As if we had never been there at all. But I know what I saw. The rangers said it was probably local kids messing around. But lanterns don't float. Shadows don't stand still for hours. And people don't erase entire campsites overnight. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still see them. The lanterns glowing softly in the woods. And I know one thing. They weren't just lights, they were watching and waiting.